The Georgia Bulldogs have gone wild on the recruiting trail in the month of June, culminating with an all-time epic run over the past week with 7 commitments in 7 days, 8 in 9 days, 9 in 13 days, and 14 commitments overall in the month of June, catapulting Georgia all the way to number 2 in the team rankings in both 247 Sports and On3. Needless to say, it's been an insane week. And today on the show, I'm going to break down every single commitment from an all-timer of a week for the Dogs on the recruiting trail.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? This is the Glory UGA podcast, the podcast designed for all of you diehard Georgia fans out there. If that's you, if you fit that description, what are we waiting on, guys? Go ahead. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn those notifications on. We have a ton of content planned for you the rest of this summer to get you guys ready with everything you need to know about this Georgia football team ahead of the 2025 season. And if you enjoy the content, make sure to like the videos and comment, guys. I'd love to hear from you. Get that conversation started. So thank you in advance for all of that. And real quickly here, before we get into today's content, before we start breaking down this epic recruiting week for the Georgia Bulldogs, I do quickly, before I forget, want to make sure to apologize for some of the videos that we put out here on this channel last week. A couple of them at various points, I know they're kind of glitchy, and I know that's frustrating to watch for a lot of you out there, because trust me, it was incredibly frustrating for me as well. I'm aware of it. I spent a good chunk of the week, or the weekend, talking with people in the software company that I use, communicating with them, trying to figure out what's going on, and we've got it fixed. So I apologize for that. Thank you guys for bearing with me, and I promise you, moving forward, that will not be an issue. We're gonna go back to the type of quality that you guys are used to here on this channel. All right, 7 commitments in 7 days. Now 8 and 9 days with the commitment of defensive tackle PJ Dean here on Monday. Guys, any way you look at this, it was an all-time recruiting week for the Georgia Bulldogs. I've been doing this podcast for this is the 11th season. We're going into the 11th season. I've been doing the Glory UGA podcast. I know this YouTube channel is relatively new. We've had it going really hard for about 8 or 9 months. We're a little late for the YouTube game. But I've been doing this podcast for a long time. So I have been following Georgia football recruiting religiously far before even when I started doing the podcast for a long, long, long time, guys. And I know when you go back 15, 20 years, some of the classes, some of the years, some of the cycles get a little fuzzy, get a little blurry. But as far as I can remember, guys, I racked my brain. I tried to go back, man. I did some research. Like, do we ever have anything like this? Like, we've had some good runs, but anything like this, and nothing comes to mind for me. And maybe some of you have better memories than me, and you guys can correct me in the comments. Let me know if I'm wrong here. But I just don't remember seeing anything like this really for any team out there. I don't follow every other team's recruiting as close as I do Georgia's, but I follow college football recruiting very closely, and I just don't remember seeing anything like it, man. It's an all-time epic recruiting week for Georgia. And again, Georgia has now moved into the number 2 slot and is the only program right now, things changed, so about like what 5-ish, 6 months to go in this cycle. But as I sit here recording this episode right now, Georgia is currently the only program to have commitments from the number 1 player at their position at 2 different positions. Now, that could change. Certainly, there's more time out there, but that's a pretty good spot to be in right now for the Dogs. And that's the thing, guys. Like, we went on this crazy run. We got a bunch of commitments in recent weeks, and certainly over the course of this past week, 7 in 7 days. But we're not talking about just like scrubs, like nobodies, right? We're talking about big time players. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, guys, 8 of those players are 4 stars or higher. 6 of them are inside the top 200. And I am starting to become more and more of a believer that the Dogs have a legit shot to finish with the number 1 class when it's all said and done in this 2026 class. I broached that topic a couple of weeks ago here on the show. And at the time, I kind of dismissed it. I guess it's possible. At that point, I think Georgia had moved up inside the top 3 momentarily. We moved back down a little bit because there was movement with some other teams. But I still believe that at that time I was like, man, USC, like, it's gonna be really hard to jump over them because they were sitting there still right now at 30 commitments, and they got a nice lead right now. Some big time players in their class are really ponying up. spending a lot of money in this cycle, dropping a lot of bags because they need to, right? They're kind of in that desperate situation when Lincoln Riley kind of needing a big year, moving into a second year of a new conference and have a great first year in that conference. It's a proud program that hasn't really been relevant in quite some time now. So they're spending like that, right? So at the time, I was like, I just don't know. I guess it's possible, but we basically have to win like every big target we have, and maybe USC would have to lose a couple guys. But after this run this past week, I'm not gonna go out there and say it's the likeliest outcome. I still think right now it's not the most likely outcome, but I would also say it's not impossible now for Georgia to some way end up with the number one class in this 2026 cycle. And the big part of why I was skeptical that Georgia could get to that point a couple weeks ago was at the time I thought like maybe we would take somewhere between like 24 to 26 players in this class. The way things are shaping up now, yeah, we're going to go beyond that, right? We're sitting right now at 24 commitments. And we've got some big names still out there that we are heavily in pursuit of. So I don't think it's a stretch that Georgia goes to like 28, 29 in this class. Will that be enough to jump over USC? Again, probably not, but I think it's more possible now than I did a couple of weeks ago. And I went to 247 Sports. So one cool feature they have at 247 is they have the class calculator, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. And basically, what you can do is you can take the class that Georgia has right now, and you can plug in like, hey, what if Georgia gets this guy? What if Georgia gets Tyler Atkinson? What if Georgia gets Caden Prothrow? What if Georgia gets Derek Cooper, the running back from Florida? And you plug in those three guys. If Georgia lands all three of those, which right now I think I'd probably lean Georgia for all three. We'll get to them a little bit later in the show. Long way to go, but I think we're in a good position. So if we somehow end up hitting on all three of those guys, that would jump us, at least on 247. I don't know about on three, but on 247, that would jump us over USC, at least temporarily. Now would Georgia finish ahead of USC? Well, that's assuming USC stays static the rest of the cycle, and that probably won't happen. They're probably going to add some more players to their class. They're doing a great job. So again, I'm not telling you that Georgia's gonna finish number one in this 2026 class, but I feel like it's more of a possibility now after this epic recruiting week than it was prior. We can at least say that. But as great as it is to celebrate epic recruiting run like we've seen here, guys, on the past couple weeks, really over the entirety of the month of June. And let's say this real quick, guys. You should celebrate it, right? It sucked not landing like Justice Terry last year. It sucked not landing Jackson Cantwell. Like we've had our fair share of high profile misses. Everybody does, and we know what that feels like. It sucks. No one likes that. So when you have a recruiting run like this, especially one that's, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of unprecedented in Georgia recruiting history, enjoy it. Soak it in, guys. Like, live it up, enjoy this, remember it, because it's not always going to be like this. We're always going to recruit well under Kirby, but weeks like this don't come along every year. So celebrate it. But as great as it is to celebrate a week like that, what I really want to do here on this show today is break down each and every player that has committed to Georgia in this wild 9-day run. All the other players that have committed in June, we've broken them down at various points on this show, on the audio side of things. You can go back and check that stuff out. But I want to focus today on the players that have committed over the course of the last 9 days, this crazy week plus run that Georgia has been on. All right. With that, let's get to it. All right, Sunday. We got to go back all the way to last Sunday. This is where things got started. We got a flip from Auburn commit Shadarius Tootle, a guy that had been committed to Auburn for almost a year, I think like 11 months. He visited Athens for an official visit earlier in the summer. And coming out of that official visit, all of a sudden, Georgia was a major player with Shadarius Tootle. A flip wasn't necessarily imminent at that time, but there was a lot of buzz that a flip might be in the air at some point, and that did happen last Sunday. If you guys want a full breakdown on Shadarius Tootle, I don't want to spend too much time on him today because I did fully break him down on the first episode of last week, so you guys can go check that out. Talk about the big flip that Georgia had to start off a big recruiting week. But just to kind of summarize Tootle's game here, he's an inside linebacker. He's an old school throwback downhill thumper of an inside linebacker who is athletic enough to operate effectively in like the modern context of spread offenses. So I love this guy. Again, go check out that episode and you'll find a full breakdown of his game. But a top 200 player nationally and a great way to start off what ended up being an epic week for the Dawgs. And on Monday, defensive lineman, he really is an edge player. So we'll go edge player, Kamari Brooks from North Oconee High School here in the Athens area, number 115 nationally, 6'3.5", 235 pounds. He commits to Georgia, and that was really a Georgia-Alabama battle. And guys, like Alabama, I'll give them credit. They made it maybe closer than it was there at the late in the cycle. Christian Robinson, old Georgia linebacker, did a good job for Alabama in recruiting him. He took an official visit to Alabama, and it really was those two schools in the end. But he was never going anywhere other than Georgia, guys. He's been a long-time Georgia lean. I have wanted this guy for a long time. I've talked about him many times on this podcast, on this channel, on the audio side of things. He was a guy that just barely missed out on making my top 5 most wanted list that I put out a couple weeks ago. He was like on the edge there, guys, of breaking the top 5. I kind of went back and forth between a couple guys at that number 5 position. He was certainly one of the guys in that conversation. And this is a player that I have seen multiple times in person. I'm not just relying on highlight tape from Huddle to break down his game. So he's an Athens area kid. I live about 2 miles from Clark Central High School. I've seen him play Clark Central. I've seen this guy play on TV in the state playoffs. So I have a pretty firm grasp of what kind of player Kamari Brooks is. And the very first time I laid eyes on him on the football field, the first thing that stood out to me was that this guy is a dominant run defender. He is straight up violent as a run defender, guys. Incredibly physical at the point of attack. And I think he has very advanced hand usage for a player at this stage in his development. Typically, with guys that are just, they're SEC caliber players, they don't have to rely on technique that much. They're just that much bigger, stronger, faster, physically dominant than the guys they're going up against, right? But Brooks is very technically advanced. You can tell he's very well coached defending the run. He does a great job of setting the edge. He gets his arms extended on the blocker, controls the blocker, is able to disengage them. Very, very violent, very aggressive player against the run, and just very physical, very hard to move there. So that's the first thing that stands out to me. Now, I will say I do think he's more raw as a pass rusher right now, but the tools are there. The athleticism is there. He's an interesting prospect because usually it's reversed, right? Usually the big time edge rushers, they are dominant pass rushers at the high school level, and their run defense is a work in progress, right? That's not their priority. Well, the inverse is true for Brooks. He is a dominant run defender right now, but still a work in progress maybe as a true pass rusher. But I'm not really worried about the pass rush stuff, guys. Like he shows the ability to do that. And again, the physical tools, the requisite athleticism you need to be a dominant edge rusher at the college level for Georgia and the SEC, all that's there. He will learn how to rush a passer with more technical proficiency. I'm not worried about that, guys. We're gonna get this guy up to speed. And here's the other thing too. Everything I've ever heard about this kid is he's just a leader. He's like one of those high character kids that you want in your locker room. So I have no doubt, no question that he will come to Georgia ready to work, ready to grind, and whatever deficiencies he might have in his game from a technical standpoint right now, he will correct those very, very quickly. He's going to be an impact player for Georgia. I think fairly early on in his career, I think he's going to have a shot there. And he was the edge we won in this class, guys. Like he's the edge that we're taking. He's the edge that we targeted, and he is the edge that we landed. So that was a great, great pickup on Monday. Kamari Brooks from North Oconee High School. Then on Tuesday, a guy that was not as highly rated, but I am highly intrigued by him, is defensive lineman Corey Howard from Valdosta, number 8'11 nationally, so not nearly as highly rated, but he's 6'6", 260 pounds right now. Very versatile in high school. I've seen him line up over the center and play zero tech. I've seen him play three tech. I've seen him line up on the edge. I've seen him in 2-point stances. I've seen him in 3-point stances. I've seen him all over the field defensively for them. All right. He's done different things because he has that kind of athleticism. And I know the question becomes, well, why is Georgia taking a guy that's rated 8'11 nationally? Like, what are they seeing that we're not seeing? What are they seeing that the recruiting rankers are not seeing? Well, guys, here's my theory. My theory on why Howard is rated as low as he is right now, as a lower 3-star, is because there's just so many questions about what position he will play at the next level. Because when you look at him, again, 6'6", 260, what are you? Because if you go to Georgia, let's say fast forward to next year, and he comes into Georgia at 6'6", 260, what are you playing? 5 tech? Maybe more of an edge rusher, right? But he's not going to stay at 6'6", 260. He will gain weight, guys. When he gets into the college weight program, he's going to get bigger, stronger. Our nutrition program is to put on weight. But the question becomes, how much bigger will he get? Does he gain 15, 20 pounds and get to like 275, 280? If that's the case, then he's probably more of a 5 tech, right? If he gets to like 300 pounds, adds good 40 or so pounds to a 6'6 frame, which is very possible with that 6'6 frame, he's more of a three tech for us. So I think that's the question. When you're trying to project him, where does he project? And I think that leaves some of the guys that do the recruiting rankings a little hesitant on ranking him higher than where he is. But here's what I will say for Corey Howard: the athleticism is off the charts. The ceiling, the potential is off the charts. Because if he gets to like 300 in that 6'6 frame, he is going to be a highly athletic three tech defensive tackle. Like you're not going to see many three techs that are as athletic as he is if he can get to that point. So I will obviously be watching very closely what happens to his body over the course of his senior year, what happens when he gets to Athens. What I would caution you, and I would just say this: I personally do not expect him to be an impact player for Georgia early in his career. Again, I think he needs some development. I think he needs to get his body right, get in that weight program, get in the nutrition program, fill that frame out, get bigger, get stronger, figure out what position you're playing, and then go about learning that position. So it's not going to happen right away. Be patient with him, but give him a couple years. Again, once he grows in that frame, figures out where he's going to play, I think this guy has the athletic tools to be a big time player for Georgia. So maybe more of a diamond in the rough there, but a guy that could really pay off and huge dividends for Georgia down the road with a little bit of patience. All right, moving on to Wednesday. Huge pickup. Running back Jay Lamar, the number 123 player nationally out of Colquitt County High School, South Georgia boy. Love the South Georgia kids. 5'11, 205 pounds. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. All right, I'm not going to be shy about this. I think Jay Lamar is a future star for the Georgia Bulldogs for a variety of reasons, guys. And look, if you just turn on the tape, if you turn on his highlights, I think you'll see it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. But the first thing that jumps out to me when I watch Lamar play is his explosiveness. He has that leave you in the dust, you ain't catching me type of home run speed. He has that extra gear. When he gets into space and he turns on those burners, he accelerates. You are not going to catch him. He just separates from everyone else on the field. We're not talking about single A private, guys. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about big boy football down in South Georgia at Colquitt County. All right. This dude is legit. And beyond that, like, that's the first thing he says out to me. But then the next thing I see and that I love in his game is the contact balance. Like home run speed is great. But if you can't take a hit and stay on your feet, you're going to limit the number of opportunities you have to bite off those chunk plays. You've got to be able to take a hit and keep your feet. And he has an uncanny ability to do that. I had a question from somebody after he committed. Somebody hit me up on social media. It was like, what do you have to do to be a five-star? And honestly, man, I don't have an answer to that question when it comes to Jay Lamar. I don't, because I look at his game and I'm like, how many running backs in the country are better than this guy, man? How many? So I don't know. Like, look, I don't want to slander the guys who do the rankings because it's an impossible task. Like, they have an impossible task ahead of them, trying to rank every high school player out there in the country. By and large, they do a great job, man. By and large, they do. But there are some misses, and there are some guys that are undervalued sometimes. And I think Jay Lamar might end up falling into that category. Because when I look at this game, I don't know. Like, what else do you want this guy to do? Because again, he has elite home run speed, separation type speed, that explosiveness, has the contact balance. I think he has awesome hips. He's shifty in space, can make you miss in space, can also make you miss in the hole. And here's another thing I love about his game. He has the rare ability to be going full speed and cut without slowing down. He can cut at full speed. And guys, I'm telling you, that is an elite trait for running backs. He has great vision. I think he's an effective zone scheme runner. I think he's an effective gap scheme runner with the zone game. He has the ability to see that hole, to play it, and hit that seam with the gap scheme stuff. He does a great job of following his blockers, letting his blockers set things up, and then running off of them. Fantastic. However you want to use him, I think he's got a lot of versatility in his game. He's also a big time threat in the pass game. So again, like, what do you want the guy to do to be a five-star? It's not that he's small. I mean, 5'11", 205. He's not the biggest running back ever. That's plenty big enough. I've seen guys that size be five stars. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Honestly, I don't care. Like, it's cool to like beat your chest and brag and say, hey, yeah, we landed a five-star running back. I'm just glad he's a dog. Like, I'm just glad he's gonna be playing the red and black. That's what I care about. Because I'm telling you, he is going to be a star for Georgia in the future. Put that in your back pocket. Don't forget I said that, guys. I truly do believe that. And then Thursday, another explosive playmaker for Georgia, wide receiver Craig Dandridge, a guy that did cracked the top 5 most wanted list I put out about a month ago. Kamari Brooks barely missed out on that. He was the honorable mention. Jay Lamar was one of those other guys, was also in contention there to find himself in the back end of that top 5 list, but just barely missed out. He was an honorable mention. But Dandridge was a guy that did come in at number 5 on that list. I love this guy. Why? Because he's explosive. Now, maybe me having him inside the top 5 most wanted list that I put out a couple weeks ago was a reaction to what I've seen recently from the Georgia receivers, certainly last year, where we just had a dearth of playmaking ability, guys. Like, we just didn't have it. It was so frustrating to watch. You watch all these other teams out there, and you're salivating over the talent and the explosiveness, the playmaking ability they have at receiver. It's like, why can't we have that? I thought we did a fantastic job of addressing that in the 2025 cycle, bringing guys like C.J. Wiley and Talon Taylor, some big-time receivers, probably the best receiver recruiting class that Georgia's ever had. Like, not just in the Kirby Smart era, I think maybe in Georgia football recruiting history in terms of just a receiving class. And you go out and you get some guys in the poor like Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas, really address that issue. But we need to continue to address that issue into the future, and Dandridge is a big part of that. He's only ranked number 229 nationally. I will say right now, I know it's easy for me to say, you're going to sit here and say, oh, you're just a homer. Of course you would say that. That's fine, whatever. But I'm telling you guys, turn on the tape. Like, don't take my word for it. Turn on his highlights and you tell me, are there 229 players better than Craig Dandridge in college football? I don't know, man. I have a hard time. I think he is wildly undervalued. I think he's a top 100 caliber player, personally. And he's 6'1", 175, so he's not small, a little thin, but not a small guy. But again, in terms of breaking down his game, the first thing that you notice with Dandridge is the explosive playmaking ability. He is a big play threat waiting to happen. He is lethal on in-breaking routes, in vertical routes. That's really kind of where he makes the biggest impact. He's a guy that'll take an RPO slant, like Lance route, he'll take a 8 to 10 yard glance route and he'll break it 70 yards for a touchdown. He'll just split the seams of the defense and just you can't touch him. You can't catch the guy. You can't. Vertically down the field, he'll just run past you. Same thing on a post route, skinny post, B post, whatever you're looking for. Those in breaking routes and the vertical routes. This guy is a difference maker. He's also dynamic with the ball in his hands. He has elite start stop ability. I also think, and again, he's not the biggest guy out there. He's not like Noah Thomas at 6'6", but even though he's only 6'1", he has really strong contested catchability. Like, he's shown on tape numerous times going up and winning those 50-50 balls. He attacks the ball, has really strong hands there at the point of attack. He kind of has, and also if you just put the ball up in the air, there's a couple of clips out there. Quarterback just puts the ball up in the air, man. He just throws it down the field, and you see Dandridge just go run under it, man. He just has the ability to track it, go get it, go find it, the speed to do that, to make that happen again. Big time playmaker receiver, and I am thrilled that Georgia landed him. I thought that we were going to, but recruiting these days, you never know until you know. So I was very excited to see that Dandridge finally made it official on Thursday. So a big time playmaker there at receiver. And then Friday, I know I sound like a broken record, calling some of these guys future stars for Georgia, but I really believe it, guys. I think Chase Calica on the defense side of the football is another one of those. I don't want to say sure thing because nothing's a sure thing, but I feel very strongly saying this guy will be a future star for Georgia in the secondary. He's number 117 player nationally out of the Houston area. Witten stole him from Texas. Everyone thought he was going to Texas, including me. I talked about this guy a couple weeks ago, kind of previewing his commitment. I was like, yeah, it looks like probably Texas, but he took an official visit to Georgia, so we're in the conversation. We got a shot, so we'll talk about him. But deep down, I thought probably Texas. And then early last week, I started to get word that that might not actually be the case. And I still wasn't like fully buying it. I was like, all right, man, I don't know. Okay, we'll see. But I got that from some sources that I trust that usually lead me in the right direction. And lo and behold, they were right. And I love this kid. 6'3", 190 pounds. He's a DB. We're recruiting him as a cornerback. But when I watch this guy play, I cannot help but see Kyle Hamilton. He gives me serious Kyle Hamilton vibes. The former Notre Dame safety, now plays for the Ravens, former Atlantic, I think Marist High School here in Atlanta. I see Kyle Hamilton when I watch this kid play. But we're recruiting him at corner, and that's the thing. He absolutely can play safety, 100%. Mainly plays safety in high school, but he also has the ability to play corner because he has the requisite hips and the flexibility you need to be able to flip those hips and turn and run with receivers. He can do that, right? But the reason I say Kyle Hamilton is first off the body. It's a spitting image of him. Watching him was like, this is Kyle Hamilton. And you look up Kyle Hamilton's measurables coming out of high school, and it's almost identical. Both, I think, are mainly safeties coming out of high school. And he, like Hamilton, is an enforcer in the back end. Like he is a saw you in half safety back there, like old school, like Thomas Davis, Greg Blue type stuff. Like honestly, some of the things that he does at the high school level, he would not be getting away with at the college level because the way it's officiated. But he's going to play, at least right now, we're recruiting him to play cornerback. I think he has positional versatility. I know that corner is where we are looking at him playing right now, but also, again, would not shock me if he ends up playing safety. But at 6'3", he has insane length. And again, with the hips that he has, the athleticism to be able to turn and run with that kind of length, he could also be just a shutdown blanket type corner as well. That's why I say he's a future star, because I think he could be an elite corner. I think he could be an elite safety. And if I use Kyle Hamilton as the comp, which I'm going to stand by, we're talking about an elite football player. I don't use that comp lightly. Kyle Hamilton was and is elite, right? I think that's the kind of player we're talking about here with Chase Calicut. So an absolute steal getting him out from under Texas there in the Houston area. And then Saturday, probably in my opinion, the biggest commitment of the entire week. Defensive tackle James Johnson from Miami Northwestern High School, big time high school program down there in Miami in South Florida. And going back to my top 5 most wanted list about a month ago, he was number 2 on that list, only behind linebacker Tyler Atkinson. But I also gave serious consideration to putting Johnson at number 1 because like we're stacked at inside linebacker. We need to get back to being dominant on the line of scrimmage, certainly on the defensive line of scrimmage. And Elijah Griffin last year was a great start. James Johnson would be even better, right? So I have wanted this guy badly for a long, long time. He's the number 1 defensive tackle with On Three's individual rankings. With the composite, I think he's number 2, and he's number 47 nationally in the On Three industry rankings. But again, On Three has him as a 5-star guy. He's 6'2", 6'2 and a half, 285 pounds. He is an incredibly athletic, physically dominant bull in a compact frame. That's how I would describe James Johnson. He is explosive, and he's got springiness in his game on the defensive line. And that's not an adjective. Springy is not an adjective that I usually ascribe to defensive linemen, but I think it fits here with James Johnson. I know people like comps. So I throw Kyle Hamilton out for Chase Calicut. For Johnson, I think Ed Oliver is who comes to mind for me. Remember the old Houston defensive tackle? I think he plays for the Bills now. A smaller, more sawed-off type defensive tackle, but elite explosiveness on the interior of the defensive line. And I see that in James Johnson. Now, Oliver is a little shorter than Johnson. I think Oliver's like 6'1", Johnson's like 6'2", 6'2 and a half. But they're both they have nice sawed-off frames. And explosiveness is what is their number 1 trait. And then Johnson also has that just bullishness that he brings. He'll just bully people on the line of scrimmage there. And he's also just cat quick, man. Like it's just unbelievable how quick this guy is on the defensive line. And one thing he does, he uses his size or maybe lack thereof to his advantage. He plays with incredible leverage. He is consistently underneath the pads of the opposing offensive lineman, and that allows him to control most of the offensive linemen that are trying to block him. He also pushes the pocket exceptionally well, gives you some serious pass rush from the interior of the defensive line. So I love this guy. Again, he was number 2 on my top 5 most wanted list for a reason. He is legit. He is the real deal. And this now means with landing James Johnson on the heels of landing Elijah Griffin in last year's cycle, that's back-to-back number 1 defensive tackles according to On Three rankings for the Bulldogs. Tough to do better than that, guys. Tough to do better than that. And then finally, wrapping things up here with this epic run on Monday, today, the Dogs landed Pierre/PJ Dean, the number 78 player nationally, according to the On Three industry rankings. He's a North Carolina kid, 6'3 and a half, 255 pounds. He is the brother of Jared Wilson. So this guy, I mean, I felt pretty good for a while that we were going to land him. And of course, ultimately, that ended up being the case. He's another top 5 defensive tackle. So in the span of 3 days, Georgia landed 2 top 5 defensive tackles, including the number 1 guy according to On Three specific rankings. Here's what I'll say with PJ Dean. It's harder for me to give you an eval of him right now, a comprehensive eval, than it is for Johnson, because there's just not a ton of clips of him playing defensive line out there right now. The clips that are out there that I have found, the most recent clips is junior tape. It's a lot of him playing offensive line. There's a handful of clips of him playing defensive line, but not a ton. Okay, so I'm gonna give you what I saw, but I just want you to understand. I take it with a grain of salt because I need to see more from him. But here's what I've seen in the few clips I've seen from him at the defensive tackle position. Plays on defense, plays primarily the nose, zero tech. He's a really good athlete. Awesome athlete. He's undersized right now. Like he looks about 255, 260 on tape, but he's got a good frame. Again, 6'3" and a half, around 6'4", somewhere around there. So he'll get his body up to like 300 pounds. And that won't be that hard for him once he gets into Georgia, get in the strength program, nutrition program, all that. But he's just not there physically yet. He'll get there. He's just not there yet. And right now, because he's not as big, he's not as physically dominant at the point of attack as a guy like James Johnson. The athleticism is there. That is there. You love that. But he's just got to get bigger. He's got to get stronger, and he's got to play more defensive line. But that's where he translates to the next level. That's what we're recruiting him as. So, you know what? I know there's not a ton of tape out there right now, but to land two top 5 defensive tackles in 3 days, man, that is getting it done, Trey Scott. It's hard to believe there was a time not all that long ago when Trey Scott was a young coach here at Georgia, shortly after Kirby Smart hired him, that a lot of Georgia fans were very frustrated with his recruiting and were calling for us to maybe make a move there because this guy just can't recruit. Well, my how things have changed. Put a couple guys in the NFL, right? The 2021 class certainly helped. Put a couple guys in the first round of the NFL draft and just let this man work because that's getting it done, man. Straight up getting it done. All right. Last thing here before we get out of here today, I know the next question, after I just ran through all those players that we landed in this all time epic week for Georgia on the recruiting front, who's next? We're never satisfied with what we've got. We always want to know who's next, man. Who's up next? Well, in about 2 weeks, we got two of our biggest main targets that will be going public on the same day, July 12th. Coincidence? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But tight end Caden Prothrow, 5-star guy who's been trending Georgia's direction for a long, long, long time. He was on my top 5 most wanted list a couple months ago, about a month ago. He'll be going public on July 12th. I feel great about where we are with him right now. Nothing's a sure thing in recruiting these days, but feel very good with where we are positioned. And then running back Derek Cooper, a guy that about a year ago was on the Georgia commit list for like 3 days and then backed off the commitment. And we've still been in hot pursuit of him since that point. He's a Florida kid. Miami's been hard after him. And I've kind of gone back and forth. Like I feel good about it, then I don't feel as good about it. Maybe Miami, back and forth with this guy. But right now, from what you hear of people who do this professionally, guys like Steve Wiltfong and the Chad Simmons of the world, it seems like Georgia is really starting to trend with Derek Cooper about 2 weeks ahead of his commitment. So I'm not nearly as confident that we will land Cooper as I am with Prothrow, but it's starting to trend in that direction. And we'll talk about it a little bit more as we get closer and closer to that July 12th date. And then finally, the last guy here that we're going to mention today, linebacker Tyler Atkinson, who was number 1 on my top 5 most wanted list for good reason. The guy is just maybe the best inside linebacker prospect I've ever seen. And I know that sounds crazy, guys, because James Williams was the number 1 inside linebacker a couple years ago. I mean, Nakobe Dean was great, right? I mean, we've let in all these big-time inside linebackers. Roquan was awesome coming out of high school. But, man, this dude's different. He's different. He's very versatile inside linebacker out of Grayson. I don't want to say he's a guy that we have to get because we're so stacked at inside linebacker, but he is an elite linebacker prospect, a true difference maker, like an early impact difference maker for whoever ends up landing him. He doesn't have an official commit date yet, but everything I'm hearing right now is that he wants to go public before his senior season starts. So even though he's not slated to commit on July 12th, it wouldn't shock me if it was shortly thereafter before we get into August. We'll see there. I don't know. But I don't think it will go much longer than the next month or so before we get a decision from Tyler Atkinson. So if you want to know who's next, those are the 3 to watch, guys. Again, if we land those 3 guys, I plugged this in with the 247 Sports class calculator. If we land those 3 guys, that would catapult us to #1 ahead of USC, at least on the 247 sports rankings for the time being, right? There's still a lot of time left in the class. We'll see what happens. Decommitments, USC might add some more players. Maybe Alabama, maybe Texas, maybe somebody else jumps up and they go on a crazy run too. Things can happen. But we have put together one heck of a recruiting class to this point, and we still are not done yet. And we'll have you covered here, guys, with all the breaking news as those commitments happen. So again, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Turn those notifications on. I'm trying to tell you guys at the beginning of the show, this channel is for you diehards. So if that's who you are, if that's what you are, subscribe, turn those notifications on. Please make sure to like the video. I appreciate you being here. But any likes, comments, all that's greatly, greatly appreciated, guys. So thank you in advance for that. But again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.